Okay, so today we're going to start a 5 week discussion, or today's might just be one, but a 5 week discussion on the blessings of the law, which is about mostly just a week, and then the curses of the law. And I do believe that in this time that we live in, that the Bible itself isn't really popular. And it isn't really popular because there's a lot of social mores that contradict it. Now, my opinion is those social mores are well prophesized in the Bible, and the prophecies seem to center around how receptive people are to the commandments. So when people are very receptive to the commandments, their lives are blessed, even if they're not saved. I remember when I was a kid, most people pretty much believed in the commandments, but my whole life has been during the decline. So initially in the decline, people believed in the commandments somewhat like Sadducees. They just didn't believe in the Spirit of God. And then that is not sustainable. So if you look at the last 10, 15 years or so, people aren't really even believing in the commandments. And because they don't believe in the commandments, they're not actually seeing the benefits of them. And because they don't see the benefits of them, then people aren't motivated for love and for goodness and for godly families and hospitality and all the things that it actually teaches. And so when I prepared this lesson, when I first read Deuteronomy 28 and when I first prepared the lesson, I was thinking of these blessings individually, and they do certainly apply individually, but I couldn't help but, using our country as a sociological representation of these principles. So in 1976, we had our bicentennial celebration, which is not too many years after 67, which I think is a significant, prophetic year. And so today we're going to talk about how the first 200 years of American history, most people believed in the commandments, most people believed in God's law, and the sociological impact that happened to the people and the nation in a positive sense from those beliefs. Okay, so these studies are all from the book of Deuteronomy, the 5th book of the Bible, and all from chapter 28. So we're going to go to chapter 28, and the blessings are found in verses 1 through 14. And we're going to start by reading verses 1 through 14. It says, "And it shall come to pass, if thou shalt hearken diligently unto the voice of the Lord your God, to observe and to do all of his commandments which I command thee this day, that the Lord your God will set thee on high above all nations of the earth. And all the blessings shall come on you and overtake you, if you shall hearken unto the voice of the Lord your God. Blessed shalt thou be in the city, and blessed shalt thou be in the field. Blessed shall the fruit of thy body, and the fruit of the ground, and the fruit of the cattle, the increase of thy kine, and the flocks of thy sheep. Blessed shall be thy basket and thy store. Blessed shalt thou be when thou comest in, and blessed shalt thou be when thou goest out. The Lord shall cause thine enemies that rise up against thee to be smitten before your face, and they shall come out against thee one way, and flee before you 7 ways. The Lord shall command the blessings upon you in the storehouses, and in all that thou settest thine hand unto thee, and he shall bless thee in the land which the Lord your God gives thee. The Lord shall establish you a holy people unto himself, as he has sworn unto thee, if thou shalt keep the commandment of the Lord your God, and walk in his ways. And all the people of the earth shall see that you are called by the name of the Lord, and they shall be afraid of you. And the Lord shall make you plenteous in goods, in the fruit of your body, and in the fruit of your cattle, and the fruit of the ground, in the land which the Lord swore unto thy fathers to give you. The Lord shall open unto you his good treasure, the heaven, to give the rain unto thy land in his season, and to bless all the work of your hand, And thou shalt lend unto many nations, and you shall not borrow. And the Lord shall make you the head and not the tail, and thou shalt be above only, and shall not be beneath, if thou hearken unto the commandments of the Lord your God, which I command thee this day to observe and to do them. And the Lord shall not go aside from any of the words which I commanded thee this day to the right hand or to the left, to go after other gods to serve them. Okay, so now we'll begin our review. And for those of you that happen to see this video after we do Deuteronomy 28, we're going to go back in chronological order to the book of Philippians, but we're taking an excursion because I think this point is worthy of note. Okay, so we're going to reread verse 1. Okay, and it says, "And it shall come to pass, if thou shalt hearken diligently unto the voice of the Lord your God, to observe and to do all of his commandments which I command thee this day, that the Lord your God will set thee on high above all nations of the earth." So interestingly enough, when the USA was a godly country, we were set up on high above all nations in the earth, and we exceeded all nations in every category for the first nearly 200 years of our country. We had bigger farms, we had more food, the people were safer, the people were healthier. The first 200 years of the lives of America, we excelled at almost every nation in every category. There was a degree where Great Britain, which was a godly nation too, not as godly as us, they might have excelled us in a couple of areas, but in whichever category you want to look at, America was the preeminent nation. And during this time, when we were godly, I dare say we were the preeminent nation in the history of nations too.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Okay, now let's look at verses 2 and 3. "And all these blessings shall come on you and overtake you, if you shall hearken on the voice of the Lord your God. Blessed shalt thou be in the city, and blessed shalt thou be in the field." Okay, so we had the most prosperous farms and cities, having let's see, prices where they were basically there was no limit. I've heard stories of people that could get caught in the ocean with their hands without even going on a boat when they first came to the East Coast, and because the people were so happy and everybody was honest, that you'd see someone in the marketplace, it would be like an instant friend. The communities knew each other. Every time you attempted to help someone, someone else would help you. This is what it means by "blessed art thou in the city, and blessed art thou in the field." The field itself, you had a physiological as well as moral blessing. The physiological is that the land was rich and plentiful resourcefully. There was unlimited crop yields and fertile ground, but then there's also the families were close. There was unlimited help in gathering the crops. There was unlimited friendliness by your neighbors in the city. The churches actually preached God's word. Everyone in the communities knew each other. All the neighbors knew each other. Each little community was like a giant family, and then having this family and these blessings made everybody happy. And then another part of this blessing is peace, as it made life peaceful. People didn't have anything to worry about because everybody believed in God and took care of each other. Okay, so then now let's look at verses 4 and 5. "So blessed shall be the fruit of thy body, and the fruit of thy ground, and the fruit of thy cattle, the increase of thy kind, and the flocks of thy sheep, and blessed shall be thy basket and thy store." So American people were the strongest. They were the healthiest. They were the most educated. In the 50s and the 60s, America's had the highest IQs, the best health results. And I'm not 100% sure, but I almost think back then we had the highest life expectancy, and which we don't now, right? And the people we definitely don't have the highest IQ now. Like some of the Asian nations totally have eclipsed America, since the bicentennial era, and we had, as I mentioned on the other verses, but they tie into this verses, we had unlimited supply of food. They said that we produced 4 times the food of what we could eat, and we had the families. Let's see. I'm going to supply food, and we'll mention the family reference. Housing costs were abundant and affordable. You practically didn't see any homeless. Myself, I only saw like one homeless person as a kid. They used to there's a name called hobos,
Right.
but nobody actually knew a hobo. We knew one in my time. Granted, I lived in a small town, so if you lived in the city, you might have seen 2 or 3. Okay, but like today, when we moved to New Hampshire in the year 2000, is I think shortly after that, maybe 2003. That's when it started to become more common. So at first, I don't know about you, but at first I thought it was a problem with New Hampshire. But then when you go back to Maine, where we lived and didn't see it, you see it there now too. And and with my work, I'd seen the homeless community, and then I bought this house in 2019, and then now the house is double what it's worth. A little more than double what I paid for. I actually have more equity in the house that I've owned for 7 years than what I paid for the house. And that sounds great, and that's good for everybody that bought a house before 2020. But imagine trying to buy this house now. Like if you're older and you already own a house with a lot of equity, it's easy to buy another house because, like I said, I got $400,000 equity on this house. So any house I want to buy, I can put $400,000 down. But if you don't have $400,000 equity, but now if you flash back to 1970, you get a house almost as nice as this for 10, 12 grand. And so, and then food, everybody produced food everywhere, and cheeseburgers cost like 20 cents. Granted, wages were less, but still, percentage-wise, it was a lot less. And people trusted in God, and maybe some people died, but people weren't as paranoid about health. And I almost think that, okay, like if you have a catastrophic illness, maybe we're better off today. But I think a lot of people get caught up in supplements and medications and actually destroy their casual health. So the bodies aren't functioning as well as they used to, and people are overweight. Okay, now if we go to verse 6. Blessed shall thou be when thou comest in, and blessed shall thou be when thou goest out. Oh, okay, so when you feel the love and happiness, and you believe in God's commandments, if you go back in the 60s, there was a sense of peace. Like it was a joy to go out. Whereas now we live in a faithless society where people are fearful. They're almost afraid to engage strangers or to go people, and people are living on their phone. But if you go back to 1970, 1960, 1950, blessed shall thou be when thou comest in, blessed shall thou be when thou goest out. That blessing means that you had love of your neighbors, you had love of people that you saw, and so and things weren't really that dangerous because people believed in the commandments. And so there was racism back then that was terrible. We have more discriminations now than we did back then, but the discriminations now aren't as bad per discrimination, but there's way more of them. So so like if you take the horrific racism that black people had to undergo, the one thing we did improve on after the church age ended, I do think multiculturalism had a lot of negative impacts on the church, but one positive impact on multiculturalism is it helped end racism for, 80% of the people in the world, right? And, but I would rather be a black man in the 50s that lived on a farm with my community and had a stable wife and kids than be a white man today where the life is isolated. Nobody wants to talk to you. You can't find a Christian family. Everybody wants to be independent, even though there's more opportunity for me as a white man today than a black man in the 50s. And as horrible, I wouldn't want to be that black man that was lynched by the KKK. I don't mean that, but I mean like in a community, despite how bad it was.
You had fellowship with the other black people at least.
As long as you weren't like with the complete lunatics. But there's complete lunatics now. There's terrorism. There's people that are doing the random shootings.
Right.
And I wouldn't want to be around them today.
Right.
There's people that go to movie theaters and get shot up. But needless to say, with the exception of racism, if you were in your community, there was joy being out in public. There was joy when you went in. When you got married, 94% of the marriages lasted. Your family loved you. Your kids loved you. Your cousins loved you. Cousins, parents, aunts, and uncles were all close to each other. And the community they're not quite as close as the family, but the community was really, really close to each other. And you didn't have the class warfare that we do now, the class separation. Like the community was a little more connected because during most of those 200 years, most people were farmers. So you didn't have like the snob zoning as to the degree that we do now. You had it. I'm not saying it didn't exist, but it wasn't as bad as it is now. Okay, now, if you go to verse 7, the Lord shall cause your enemies that rise up against thee to be smitten before thy face, and they shall come out against thee one way and flee before thee 7 ways. Okay, so during the Christian era in the United States, we did not lose one war or battle in any of our conflicts in the world. We might have lost the one with the Canadians, but for the most part, we didn't lose anything, right? We sent out missionaries around the globe during this time to save the world, and then in the carnal sense, we saved the world in World War I and World War II. And ironically, the first time that we completely botched a war was just before the bicentennial. It was the Vietnam War in '67, which is, you wouldn't have thought of it at the time, but it kind of ties into this, because before the Christian era ended, everybody fell before the Americans. And then since the Christian era has ended,
not so much.
Not so much. No, we might have had success in Grenada, but we did not have the ultimate success in Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan, and now, we're fighting in Iran, and time will tell what will happen there. And, okay, now if you go to verse 8, the Lord shall command thy blessings upon thee in thy storehouses, and all that thou settest thine hand unto, he shall bless thee in the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee. Not only were most people's crops plenteous, but most people were very productive in their work and in their personal lives. The church was the center of the communities, and all people gathered together at this focal point every week, and then people got their families from church, all of their daily activities, centered around church. And we basically started this ministry hoping to rebuild such a church on a smaller scale. And this is why we're now doing it on YouTube. We're hoping to meet some other people that feel the same. Like church wasn't an entertainment structure. It was basically a community where people gathered. And you can see this today in a degree in the Amish communities.
Yeah.
And they did it even better than meeting in a building. They meet in houses, and then the communities are all close. And they're probably not as spiritual as they used to be, but basically, I say that this stems from believing the law and obeying the commandments. It had this effect on people. It wasn't just some coincidental thing. Like if you believe in not forsaking the assembling of yourselves together, then these things that Moses is describing happen. If you believe in loving your neighbor as yourself, these things happen. If you believe in taking care of the fatherless and the widow, then you get a community like this if enough people believe it. If you believe in keeping your mind on whatsoever things are pure, holy, and good, then you end up admiring good people, and then you're blessed in the city and blessed in the storehouses and so on and so forth. And so because of the power of the commandments, the virtue of the commandments, these positive results come from believing in them. And I think today people aren't seeing the benefits of it. People are more likely to talk about a political thing or what's wrong with other groups or what makes their group justified, and no one's actually engaging or they're having practical discussions on what's the godly way to save a failed marriage, or what does God say if your kid is a lazy bum. These are things that you hear on the radio, but in summary, what's replaced the commandments in the church age is political views as well as secular problems. Political views and secular problems have overcome the belief in love and the commandments. And then as a result of it, the churches themselves do not have much of a better divorce rate than the secular world, and they have the same anxieties and the same problems. Okay, that was verse 8, right? Now let's look at verses 9 and 10. The Lord shall establish thee a holy people unto himself, and he has sworn unto you, if thou shalt keep the commandments of the Lord your God and walk in his ways, and all the people of the earth shall see that you are called the name of the Lord, and they shall be afraid of you. Okay? So if you go back in the church age, I think the United States was known as the godly nation. Mm-hmm. And America was known as in the Christian era as the Christian center of the world, and its people were known to be happy and upright and godly. And now, as I travel, people see Americas as full of excess, overweight. We're known for gun violence. We're known for our political faux pas. We're no longer, I don't believe that people see us as the Christian nation that they did 50 years ago, mm-hmm. or 60 years ago.
Right.
But we were seen, but if you go back 50, 60 years ago, we were seen as Christians. The term ugly American was kind of an ironic thing. It was based on the opposite. It was based on the American being naive and happy. Mm-hmm. And that was turned off some of the Europeans. But America's was known as big thinkers, Christian, happy, loving, and more intense and more exciting.
Yeah, as a country, we were the most generous.
Yes, we're the ones that brought generosity to the world. We're the ones that pioneered helping other people.
Foreign aid.
And up until recent times, and it might even still be true to this day, Americans donate more money to causes. Now, with the Trump era of politics, we're trying to change that a little bit, mm-hmm. and we got rid of U.S. aid, and I think people are looking at people in need as a drain, mm-hmm. rather than
an opportunity for virtue.
Right, and part of the American way, in its transitional phase since the 70s, we did learn through a capitalist system. Well, like we talk about, just to use an example, is when I first started business, I failed, you helped me. And then by you helping me, my business succeeded. Then your business failed. Well, then I was able to help you. Now, if you didn't help me, I wouldn't have had the resources.
Right.
That's almost like an American ideal.
Right. Yeah.
In a way.
Yeah. Is
that like if you help the guy that's not doing well, that everybody benefits, right. when they benefit.
Yeah.
And but I think a Christian approach is even more selfless than that. Even though that was the American way,
right.
it's just love your neighbor as yourself and treat them as equal. Not that we didn't do the Christian thing, but
Right, but if we send food to Kenya, they're not really going to help us.
right, but we might save 100,000
Yeah.
people's lives in the process. But I think it actually did help us in a way because the way that actually, no, I'm not going to get into that for this subject. I think it did help us. It just didn't help us in the short term. And I don't know if I read verse 10 when I read verse 9, but verse 10 was, okay, yep, okay. Okay, yeah, this is actually going along a little quicker than I was planning. Okay, verse 11, and the Lord shall make thee plenteous in goods, in the fruit of thy body, in the fruit of thy cattle, in the fruit of thy ground, in the land which the Lord swore unto the fathers to give thee. Now, I think it is safe to say that this prophecy, not only was it fulfilled, like when you read Genesis and you look at Jacob was godly and Laban wasn't. So whatever deal he made with Laban, Jacob was going to be the victor.
Yeah.
Because he had this particular blessing upon which he didn't know about or maybe he knew, I don't know, but obviously Moses was a descendant of Jacob, but these principles of God were universally true. Mm-hmm. And so, but as true as this was with Jacob, I think the pinnacle of this was Americans during the bicentennial era of the United States. I mean, boy, were we rich in cattle, rich in crop. We had hundreds and hundreds of acres of vegetables, especially in the Midwest. They'd be hurt. They didn't just call the buffalo like this. If you go up, the herds of buffalo. Mm-hmm. We even have a culture. The whole term cowboy culture stems from this verse being true. Mm-hmm. It was so.
Yeah, they had the food basket of the world.
Yeah, it was called the food basket of the world, and I don't really think that's true anymore. We might still produce a lot of food, but I don't think that
we grow soybeans to turn into ethanol or something.
Well, you have big companies that I don't know what percentage of the farm that they do, but I'm going to guess it's like 70-80%, and then the little farms do 20%, but it would cost $1 million to get a farm.
Yeah.
It's actually, everything has become monetized in a way that it's not, like if we go back 200 years ago, you go to the Midwest, they give you, 50 acres of land for practically free, and then you start a farm, and then your church community helped you build the house, mm-hmm. Then you started a family, and then once you start the farm would grow, the crops would grow, and then there would be more and more of it. Now, ironically, people weren't necessarily wealthy in the way that we are today, in the way that the top 10% is, but mm-hmm. Interestingly enough, the bottom 90% could have 100 acres of land and unlimited supply of food. So it was, right. It's almost really difficult to compare. And it's interesting how when you look at this blessing, it happened. It feels impossible to happen now. Mm-hmm. I can't even conceptualize how it would work. But if you look at just, housing costs, a lot of the things that make it expensive is the fact that someone's house burns down, they sue the contractor. Mm-hmm. So then they put extra regulations to make the house more safe, and then these things cost more money. Or then someone built a house next to someone else's house, and the new house wasn't as nice as the existing house, so then it lowered the value of the existing house. So then people say, we don't want these houses in our neighborhood because then it lowers the value of our house. Mm-hmm. and then you have the environmental regulations. People sued because the stream wasn't flowing as good as it used to, or some bird died. So then you gotta have so much store frontage, you gotta have a silt fence, you gotta have perfect drainage on the house so that nobody gets upset. These things make housing costs more high. So if you actually believed in the commandments, then I would actually view you having a place to live to be more important than the value of my house. That, I mean, if you think about the golden rule, isn't loving your neighbors yourself, isn't your neighbor having his needs met more important than my house going up in value?
Yeah.
And if you actually, people didn't sue everybody every time there was a problem,
Right.
then we would not have as many regulations involved in the houses.
Right.
And if people weren't so greedy with the way that the competitive nature has had an interesting effect on education and made education expensive, which makes property taxes expensive, which then the property taxes becoming expensive make it so that it costs towns money to have affordable housing, so then the towns have no incentive to allow affordable housing because, so it it's hard to imagine that if you just believed in all the commandments that you would have affordable housing, right? But the reason I wanted to give this a little explanation is I think if you just said that at face value, people would think it's crazy. But if you can imagine a society where people aren't suing, people love their neighbor as themselves, where we don't have to have all these regulations, that we leave it between God and the individual. And if we wanted to take care of the widows, that means if a widow was looking for land, she gets it for free if you own it, right? This would actually bring down the cost of everything and actually make things more affordable. Interestingly enough, it wouldn't necessarily benefit those of us that are in the top 10% as much.
Right.
But it wouldn't bother me if it helped the other 90%.
Right.
And but then also those of us that are in the top 10% might be wealthier, but we got to work harder and have more complications and have more stress. I would rather have it like it was 60 years ago with a not so nice house with food that's not quite as fancy. The way that it is now, we actually do have income inequality, and some of our carnal needs are better than before, but as a whole, society is oppressed. And even while you have nicer cars and nicer food, you're more oppressed than the people that were more upwardly mobile. What you can see just in our lives, our parents' generation that had a little bit of money that were in the top 10% had a house on the lake. I don't really think that's affordable now.
No.
And I don't mean it just people, like, it's not affordable for the people that it was affordable. It's everything's affordable if you make over $1 million a year.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's affordable for even doctors that make $300,000.
Yeah, I mean, that's my retirement dream, is to get a house on the lake, but I don't see that happening.
I mean, a doctor that makes $300,000 or $400,000 a year can afford to buy it, but it's a horrible investment.
Yeah.
Whereas if you go back in 1960,
Yeah,
it
no
did,
big deal.
right. And okay, so we left off on.
It's like,
Had we done verse 11? Let's see. I should.
So,
What's that?
I think so.
Okay, so we left off on verse 12. Okay. So the Lord shall open. Let's see. Well, verse 11 is the Lord shall make thee plenteous in goods, and the fruit of thy body, and the fruit of thy cattle.
Yeah, we talked about the
fruit basket of the world.
fruit basket on the cattle.
Okay, so verse 12, the Lord shall open unto thee his good treasure, the heaven, to give thy rain unto thy land in a season, and to bless all the work of thine hand, and thou shalt lend unto many nations, and thou shalt not borrow. Okay. Okay, so if we go and break this down, so the beginning of the verse, the Lord shall make thee plenteous in goods. We had talked about that in the previous verses, but I think a lot of times, a lot of people even called America the land of plenty as a reference to how Israel was during the time of Moses, right? We were definitely plenteous. To say we were plenteous in goods is kind of like an understatement. And in the fruit of thy body, we had created at that time, and maybe this one is still continued, but to a lesser degree, but the world's greatest athletes. And I do think we had the healthiest people, and we had, the longest life expectancy. Probably not by a big margin, but I think it's almost reversed a little bit now. Like we're still producing a lot of great athletes, but we're not viewed as the healthiest in the world like we were, back before the bicentennial era. Okay, and okay, people of the earth shall see that thou art called. Okay, the Lord shall open unto these good treasure the heaven to give. Okay, I'm going back with verse 11. Okay, I see your point. Okay, the Lord shall open unto thee his good treasure the heaven to give rain unto the land in his season, and to bless all the work of thy hand. So everything that we did was blessed. Our car industry surpassed the European car industries back then. Since after 1976, the Japanese surpassed us. Okay, if you look at let's see, we go back to verse 12. They ran to the land in a season. So the rain on the land in the agricultural sense means that you get the rain and the crops grow. I think that principle also applies if you're looking in a social sense. If you're looking for a good family, then he will bless it. The spiritual blessings upon your family, your redemptive work, your missionary work is equal to the rain. That's why the Spirit is often equated, to water. And thou shalt lend unto many nations, and thou shalt not borrow. I remember when I was a kid, and I'm not knocking Reagan because I like Reagan, but I learned this during the Reagan administration, as people said that before Reagan we were the biggest lending nation in the world, and then they said now we're the biggest debtor. Mm-hmm. So during the actual bicentennial year, I mean, we could look it up on Google, but I don't think we were in debt in the 70s. If we were, it was very small. Mm-hmm. But we when we did things like the Marshall Plan and everything else, we were helping other people, and we helped rebuild Europe after World War II. We also helped countries that had no resources. We helped them spiritually with missionary work during the church age. We also helped them politically, and we helped them economically. We helped the entire world overcome oppression. We saved the world from Hitler. We saved the Jews from the Holocaust, although it was too late for like a third to half of them. It was the worst tragedy in the history of mankind. But needless to say, we, as a nation, we did more to help people than any other nation. Now we have a deficit that's approaching $40 trillion and climbing. And I don't know what the exact number is, but something like 2/3 of that comes from foreign countries. So we no longer are the world's largest lending nation. We are the country that needs the most debt. So from an economic standpoint, it's kind of foolish to start a trade war with the people that are funding you, mm-hmm. that you are in debt with. But that's what we are doing currently. Okay, so now let's conclude this section with verses 13 and 14. And the Lord shall make thee the head and not the tail. So the United States, especially during the latter half of the bicentennial, was definitely the head, was the key nation in all of the world. And thou shalt be above only, and thou shalt not be beneath. Okay, so I remember just even 25 years ago, most people were excited to come to our country. I don't really think that America is viewed as the premier destination as it was during the church age. I think during the bicentennial years, everybody believed that they would have, they called it the American dream. The term American dream stems from this blessing.
Mm-hmm.
And in recent times, I don't think it's as big of a dream. I think it's just an opportunity to earn first world wages to ship back to a third world country. But if you go back to 1800s, there was a story of some guy, I know you vegetarians wouldn't like this, but he was from Ireland and he didn't want to tell his family that he eat meat every day because they wouldn't believe it.
Yeah. Right.
So the land of plenty was rich in all these blessings, but when you came to the country, it was full of people that believed in the law and believed in the commandments. Now, if someone was a skeptic and they hear what I'm saying, I'm not foolish enough to say that every single person did this. It was the vast majority, just like there was murderers, there was rapists, and there was wars throughout the entire, church age. And thou shalt not go aside from any of the words which I command thee this day to the right hand or to the left, or to go after other gods to serve them. So we didn't really serve other gods during this time. It was predominantly a Christian nation. We taught Christianity in the schools, but the school thing didn't really start to any significant degree till the 2nd century of the bicentennial. Most people learned in their homes. Then they started the one, school classrooms, in the 1800s. Then the 1900s is when, the formalized education, started. But if you go back, America definitely was the richest in goods. We had the biggest farms. We produced the most foods. If you take the baby boom generation and older, Americans had the highest IQs. And if you look, like people often say, if you look in the 70s, nobody was fat. We were physically fit. It was the most affordable place in the world to get a house. It was the cheapest place to buy food. And it really, you can ask yourself, do you think it's a coincidence that all of these benefits came from the country that believed in the commandments the strongest?
Right.
Because I think you could say England was a distant second, and they had these blessings too, or Great Britain, if you include all of the countries of Great Britain, they had these blessings. I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, I would say 30% less than us.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Yeah.
the other Western European countries were just a step below them. And they had, but then the countries that did not believe in God were pretty much impoverished as they are to this day. I mean, they're building up more technology, but like the quality of life was at its greatest in the United States during the first 200 years of existence. That's the bicentennial. I don't know the exact date of how many years we were before that, but all of those years, the same principle is true.
Mm-hmm.
The year before we actually founded the country, when we were colonies of England, I don't know, that was another 100, 200 years, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know about you, but when you read these 14 verses and then you think of the first 200 years of America, do you not see the correlation?
Yeah, definitely.
And then when you see, as we've moved away from God, the opposite of these blessings are true, and that's what we're going to study as we move into this next week. We got a month to go on that. So dear God, I pray that you put these blessings upon us, that you rebuild your remnant. Even though we're living as the days of Noah, there's no sociological blessings, but your Spirit is available to all who listen. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.